Hey, welcome to the Tim and Gugabe podcast. We're going to be previewing UFC 251, Usman and Masvidal. We also have a special guest here. We'll get to him in a second, Brett Appley. But Gugabe, how are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. When you told me Brett Johnson was coming on the podcast, I was happy, and Brett Appley instead, so which is fine.
Good old Brett Johnson. He has a fight coming up. Montel Jackson, yeah. But speaking of the other Brett Appley, you want to just say a little bit about yourself? I've done your show before. It's actually the only thing I've done other than this. But you are a DraftKings guy, and I'm not a DraftKings guy. I'm familiar with it, but if you just want to maybe share a little bit of info about yourself and where people can find your stuff or whatever you want to talk about before we get into the card.
Sure, yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to talk to you, Tim and Gugabe. I'm excited. I think we can really overwhelm Gugabe with some stats here, some numbers. Really looking forward to that. I wish I had the skill set of Brett Johns. That would be fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't. Like Tim said, I'm more of a DraftKings guy. Yeah, my full-time job is just analyzing fights, breaking them down, more so from a DraftKings perspective, trying to help people win money on DraftKings. That's my forte, and obviously I'm into straight gambling as well. And yeah, all my content you can find on Twitter. I work for Roto Grinders, but on Twitter at Brett Appley, @TPP. As far as my background, yeah, not much to it. I have been following MMA, I'd say, for the past 10 or so years pretty heavily, and trained jiu-jitsu for the past 7 or so years, and that kind of led me down the path of starting watching MMA heavily and trying to analyze the sport analytically, and yeah, here I am today. It's a pretty cool community we got here. A lot of people to talk to, like yourselves, and look forward to chatting about the fights today.
Yeah, for sure. I just before we kind of go into it, I'll assume most people know the MMA DraftKings format who are listening. I feel like most people are pretty hardcore gamblers who probably listen to this, but it's been around. I know we talked about it before we went on air, but DraftKings for MMA has been around since like 2014, you said?
Yeah, the very end of 2014 is when they first launched it. I think I started writing in January 2015. It's cool that I'm on this week. Not only is it a big card, UFC 251, but there's actually $1 million to first place on DraftKings this week, which is very exciting.
That's like the second or third time they've done that, right?
Yeah, second time up until this, COVID era. Yeah. We really never got to see first place prizes. Even 100K was a lot. So you can kind of imagine the space that I'm in right now. Things have just blown up, and yeah, this is the second time ever that we've had $1 million to first place prize. The last one was for the previous pay-per-view with Amanda Nunes. 3 people split that for, I think, like 390K each, which was very exciting. We got to talk to one of the winners there, said he was paying off his student loans, et cetera, et cetera. Very cool. But yeah, this is the second time ever, so it should be interesting.
Nice. Well, hopefully one of our listeners or one of us wins that $1 million this weekend. But it's $1 million in like total prizes, right? Like does first place actually get it, or
no? First place is $1 million.
All right. Well,
sweet. It is. I think it's a. I'd have to go back and check. It is a Is it a $2 million prize pool? It is a $2.5 million prize pool. Unfortunately, when they decided to run it the first time for the Nunes pay-per-view, it's just it wasn't that good of a card, and they made it, I think, $3 million total, and it didn't quite fill. And then they got scared, so they lowered the prize pool. So it's a big chunk of money to first place. Like, essentially, if you're playing this tournament, it's kind of like a lottery, right? If you're playing that tournament and you don't get first place, you can't really expect to win much money. But yeah, first place is literally $1 million. So theoretically, you could be unique enough, 13 fights, you could actually take home a full $1 million on Saturday.
And there are 13 fights, so the lineups could be, differentiated rather than like a 10-fight lineup or something. But Cool. Well, yeah, just as we're going through, we'll just talk about the fights generally, even though you're a DraftKings guy, but feel free anytime you want. And maybe when we're done with the card, you can just kind of say whatever DraftKings content you want, whether there's a specific fight you like to target for DraftKings or a specific fighter or whatever. We can kind of, we'll just wing it. We're not too serious here. But Gugabe, I'll throw the first fight to you. The first couple fights I researched a little bit, haven't fully taped, but then I'm fully taped on everything else. So I might not be much help in the first couple. But Martin Day and Davey Grant, what do you think?
I did fairly deep tape this last night, just boredom. Honestly, Day is a bit of his chin's a bit of a liability. He puts up good standing numbers, but I don't really trust his takedown defense. It's just like, I'm not playing Davey Grant because he's 36 years old and he's kind of always been kind of wishy-washy. But also, I can't see how you play Martin Day at minus 180. I just can't see it. Like, there's just enough inherent holes to what he does. Like, there's regional tape of him getting knocked out with full guard, ground and pound. Like, completely knocked out. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not touching that guy. Yeah, it should be a fairly noodly fight. Imagine Dale busy on the feet. Grant, if he gets top position, can probably hold it. But really, it's just a silver level fight. Like, I'm just passing at the current line. Like, gun to my head, I'd probably play Grant, but he's 26.
It's like one of those classic, like, you'd probably maybe air it to the dog, but dog or pass type of thing, but whatever. But Brett, is there anything that sticks out to you? I'm sure you saw I probably don't have to tell you that Martin Day does have 85% takedown defense, so that could come into play. And the fact that he landed over 100 significant strikes against Ping Yang, I'm sure you know that too. And it's something I've noted, but I still need to kind of look at some of his pre-UFC fights just to kind of see how they match up. But what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely did notice that. The 100 significant strikes caught my attention. I mean, Davey Grant is like a really, really frustrating fighter to analyze. I mean, the guy, 8 out of his Tapology record's kind of messed up, but it says like 8 out of his 11 professional victories have come by submission, and then all 4 of his professional losses have been by submission. It's like, it just makes it very difficult to trust. And going against Grigory Popov in his last fight, I think a lot of us expected him to maybe, have advantages on the mat. I didn't really see him going out there and landing 6 takedowns. And as far as Martin Day, like, I think he's I just read my write-up on him from his UFC debut, which I like to do often, and I was not very high on him. I did not say many kind things, but just the fact that he's very active on the feet interests me, and I think that's probably his path to victory there. He's just, we could very easily see a circumstance in which Grant gets the fight to the ground a couple times, makes rounds competitive. I certainly wouldn't trust Day as a heavy favorite either.
Yeah, that's pretty much what my thoughts were pre-tape, but I know both guys. I watched some of their recent fights, but I really didn't look at much of Day's like Ping Yang fight, to be completely honest. But that's kind of what I was thinking. Grant at least puts up offense as far as like takedowns go, But and he doesn't get hit. So, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like that I think he at distance was like even with Popov, so that's probably not great, But
he also doesn't seem like he really likes to engage on the feet much. Like, I don't just look at those 100 significant strikes and think, well, Day's going to land 100 here. Like, I really worry that Grant's kind of going to limit the exchanges, which sucks.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
My view was kind of against Popov. Like, Popov's main and only skill set is striking. I liked how Grant was countering kicks, and Day's striking arsenal is like mostly like insane flourishy kicks.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, maybe that factors into it. Like, if Grant wasn't 36, I'd probably be playing him small, just I feel like he's got a bit more actionable. And I honestly had Day beating Lou. Like, that was my scorecard for it. Like, it was like Day had by far the damage, but also Ping Yang just looked he just looked off.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think we're all kind of on the same page. I don't think we need to spend much more time on this fight, unless if there's anything you want to add for a DraftKings point of view. Brett?
No, I mean, I don't think either fighter is going to be really popular here. It's kind of one of those fights that I would only play if I get sucked into that middle range of pricing and just want to, maybe lower the overall ownership of the fight. But yeah, this is certainly not one that I would prioritize by any stretch.
For sure. Cool. Let's move on to Tybura and Grishin, and this is like kind of the next. I know both guys. I know Grishin coming over from PFL. He's actually fought decent competition outside of the UFC, so he's not like a complete unknown. And PFL does have stats, FYI, Brett, if you want to talk about that later. But I don't know. I haven't watched Grishin for a little bit. Gugabe, I know you did some tape.
It's pretty underwhelming, but he seems okay. Against Jordan Johnson, which is kind of a similar thing, all the success was the single moments of power punching, and it is Tybura, so Tybura could just collapse in the moment. It's just how Tybura is. But I feel like you'll probably see quite similar sort of Johnson Grishin as a thing, where Grishin got controlled pretty easily, but also Tybura is very fragile.
Yeah. Brett, did you see anything here, or did you research this yet?
I just did some research on this fight, and I found it kind of tricky, quite honestly. The Johnson Grishin fight, the first one that I watched, there just wasn't much that happened there. So my worry and my thinking is that, Grishin might be able to knock Tybura out in the first minute, but if not, if he wins, it's going to be really slow, really low scoring, just, a bunch of single strikes, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I assume Tybura's path to victory is more or less, being more active or trying to get the fight to the ground. Is that your read?
Yeah, that's what I would think. I need to look at Grishin's wrestling because I remember he stopped Johnson. So I've seen all those fights, but you know how it is. You have to refresh your memory and look at things. But I just kind of thought it was probably going to be a low tempo kickboxing match and probably stayed on the feet for stretches. And that's kind of what I thought. I just kind of thought it was split decision-y type of shit. But yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. I mean, watching Tybura against Spivak, Spivak is just so poor defensively that I feel like Grishin will be able to hold up a little bit more, but I haven't seen him enough off his back to know just how bad it could get if Tybura does land takedowns.
How dare you insulting Spivak in Gugabe's presence? He cashed for Gugabe against who was that?
Tybura.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, he was a plus 300. He looked like a minus 300.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, in hindsight, it was an incredible play. You're right. It looked like the odds should have been flipped.
He whooped them. That was just a great moment in UFC history. I've never liked to. I've never liked to Ribas anyway. It just annoys me. The way I see it, it's I felt Grishin was okay off his back against Jordan Johnson. He got control, but it wasn't like he was getting absolutely mauled. Yeah. And Jordan Johnson's pretty legit, though Jordan Johnson seems to have lost some athleticism ever since he came to PFL. I know. I personally like Jordan Johnson back in the day.
Russian fighters. Who was that guy who Jordan Johnson fought in the UFC in his last fight? I played Johnson in that fight. It was like some YouTube star.
Yeah, the YouTuber. What's
Yandiev or
Yandiev. Yeah, that was a whooping.
I don't even like playing unknowns like that often, but I was like, this guy looks awful on tape. So I was happy with that for Johnson. And
all his wins ninja chokes or something?
Yeah, one of them looked extremely staged. That was my biggest worry of the path to victory, and I'm not a narrative guy, but it was in Russia. I was like, I hope this isn't fixed. But I mean, I think the UFC is generally, not corrupt at things like that, and it's out of my control. But I just remember I went big on Johnson there just because I thought the other guy looked so awful. And I just thought Johnson would have a severe grappling edge, but I don't know. I just think this fight's going to kind of be Grishin could kill him, and for DraftKings, that could be valuable, Appley. But if he doesn't, it kind of just seems like it will be one on a few exchanges, right?
Yeah, that's the problem, though, because, you know, Tanner Boser could have just killed Flins, but most likely that wasn't going to happen. And, of course, that's exactly what he went out there and did, and ruined my night and a lot of other nights. So, yeah, you play him just hoping that, you know, X amount of times out of 100, he wins by knockout. And on those times, your lineups are going to boost above everyone else's. But knowing that if he doesn't win by quick knockout, it's probably going to kill that specific lineup.
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense. I don't know. I wasn't too interested in these first two fights. I am still going to kind of do a little more research myself, but now I feel like I can contribute. We can go on to Salikhov and Zaleski. I'll go first here. Pretty much, Brett, I know you know the numbers. Like, I know Salikhov is kind of low volume offensively, but I really like his defense. And I do trust generally his kickboxing track record. So I don't have an issue saying I probably favor him on the feet. But at the same time, Zaleski doesn't have bad numbers either, striking, and I could still see it being competitive. Like, I don't think Zaleski's screwed there by any means, but I would probably favor Salikhov a little bit. But the issue here is Salikhov has, I think, 72% takedown defense, but I just did not like what I saw against Alex Garcia because I feel like he defended a few situations well. And then when he got pushed up against the cage, he didn't even kind of like lower his posture to get an underhook. He just kind of grabbed an underhook standing straight up in the air and just got taken down easily. And he got passed very easily. So I do favor Zaleski on the mat, but at the same time, I'm sure you know Zaleski has only landed 3 takedowns in his career. But I feel, and he attempts anywhere from like 1 to 7 takedowns, right? And it's like, if he attempts 1 takedown, I probably favor Salikhov to win. If he attempts 7, 1 to 2 takedowns could probably win him the fight either by a finish or just swinging a round or 2, right? So I'm okay with the very tight line personally, and I'll swing it back to you, and then Gugabe can kind of jump in. But that is what my read is. So, like, from a betting point of view, I think it's probably should be lined pretty close.
No, I agree. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think I was not as scared off by his defense against Alex Garcia. I actually thought it was okay. Like
a couple takedowns. Yeah, there were. Yeah, for sure.
Like, just knowing how just absolutely physical Garcia is as a wrestler, and knowing how poor takedown defense many strikers have coming into the UFC, I thought it was acceptable. Like, I thought his defense was acceptable. The issue for me is more if he gets put on the mat with any consistency.
Agreed. It's a passing. Like, he can't retain guard. That's the issue.
Yeah, and he's just going to give up his back to stand up. Zaleski, what I've always liked about him with the wrestling is that he's willing to wrestle. He's not a guy who just, doesn't use it. He's just been very poor. Like, he only lands takedowns at a 20% accuracy. So, I was big on him against Curtis Millender and what I remember being a fairly competitive line, because I just thought, he was still going to be pretty willing there. And Millender was just so bad on the ground. I feel like Salikhov is a step above that. Like, I still could see Zaleski getting a takedown or 2 over 15 minutes. I don't think it's going to be much more than that. And if that might be all it takes.
Yeah.
But it's hard to trust that. On the flip side, I agree with you. I think Salikhov's a more dangerous striker. He's just so much more effective on a strike-to-strike basis. But he's literally the type of fighter who goes out there and might land 8 strikes in the first round. And you just can only cap a guy like that so high in terms of projected chance to win, because if you land 8 strikes, even if they're more effective than your opponent, you're getting yourself into these split decision type scenarios. So I also think the line, should be competitive.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Yeah, and like I said, it was more so. That's why I think the attempts of 1 to 7 from Zaleski, because that's like his range when it goes 3 rounds, is really important, because I think Salikhov isn't bad defensively from a takedown, defending takedowns. But I think like it's more so the passing on the mat. He just allowed so many passes. I think he allowed 3, and not that much of a fight, really.
Yeah.
I forget how long that went, but that's why I think like if Zaleski attempts 7 takedowns, he probably will land 1. Maybe he doesn't, but that just makes the fight so much more of like I don't know. I just feel like it increases the chances of Zaleski to win, but I don't know.
And I'm curious. I'm curious what you guys think about like Salikhov's chances to win by knockout, just because he doesn't throw that many strikes, and obviously we've just seen Zaleski get knocked down a few times by Jing Liang, but it's hard to tell if that's, I hate just looking at that fight and being like, oh yeah, Salikhov is going to knock him out if this fight plays out on the feet.
Gugabe, what do you think?
Yeah.
I took the under at like plus 130, which is now like minus 120, which is just like me just thinking like both have very legitimate finishing chances.
Yeah.
My issue with Salikhov is I kind of want to play Zaleski moneyline at plus 100, because Salikhov's round 1 is so low volume. Like every round 1, he's just like barely edged it, or he just had a split round. So unless he gets the KO, I just think like it's very good chances. If it hits the decision, I just don't think you're going to be confident in Salikhov, because like any takedown or protracted grappling exchange is probably going to be either a Zaleski finish or a Zaleski round. And Salikhov is so low volume. The issue is partly like a Salikhov KO. Like I get the justification, but also against Staropoli, how he followed up after hurting him kind of concerned me. He seemed like if he kills you in one shot, he's fine with that. He doesn't really follow up that well. Maybe he's worried about getting taken down, but also just stylistically just doesn't really swarm.
I always think it's smart to look at when someone doesn't have the grappling edge like Salikhov here. I do think it's always kind of smart to project a finish. Like I would decrease his chances a little bit, because like a club and sub is way less likely, obviously. So that will kind of like lower his chances for a finish. And just kind of a follow up with ground and pound, he might be more willing to kind of let him up. I mean, that's theoretical, but I'm just saying like generally the dominant grappler, if they get the better grappler, usually gets the follow up finishes easier. And like I don't have any like statistical evidence on that, but I just at least that seems like it makes sense to me. But Brett, so I don't know if that answers your question a little bit, but I still think these are really hard to call. Like knockouts are just hard to call, especially when it's competitive.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it does make sense because like, like there's so many times where a striker might knock someone to the ground who has a grappling edge, and they just might be a little bit afraid to follow up on it. And so that kind of kills off a little bit of the upside from knockouts. And yeah, like Gugabe said, if this fight goes the distance, it's going to be very hard to be confident in Salikhov, because it's like if he's landing so effectively, if his path to victory is coming to fruition, if he's landing these hard shots, he might just win by knockout. So if it actually goes 15 minutes, that means he didn't land hard enough to win by knockout. So therefore, it's not. It's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, I mean the odds do reflect that a little bit too. Like Santos by decisions plus 230, Salikhov by decisions plus 355. So like I just generally look at this fight and see. I think it's like generally lined reasonable, from a betting point of view. But I do like that underplay Gugabe, because there is some binary aspects to this fight.
Yeah. Like even Zaleski KO is kind of live. Like he will come for you.
Yeah, like he can throw. It's possible. Yeah.
And also rewatching like Lee versus Zaleski. I bet Lee pretty big against Zaleski, because I was just like plus 200 for this sort of tier of welterweight. What the fuck? But like that was a very, very close fight. Like round 1 was a Leech knockdown, which really separated on identical volume, and round 2 was like Zaleski edging it. So it wasn't like Zaleski got destroyed in that fight.
Yeah, that makes sense. I need to rewatch that. Yeah, he was a big underdog going in.
Leech was plus 200 or something from memory.
Yeah.
I guess I just feel like people like there's like several weight classes. You got that sort of action fighter, sort of like 20 to 10 spot, and people just randomly decided that whoever's got the hot hand must be better than the other ones.
Yeah,
like you're all essentially the same person.
Yeah.
Like it's like Luke Perry sort of pricing. It's like you're all essentially the same person.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like there's like 20 welterweights who just it's going to be a split decision almost every time, and then whoever's hot will just become way too big of a favorite, I feel. But I feel like we're all pretty much on the same page on that one. I think that's an interesting fight, though. I'm actually excited for that one. Moving on to, I think this is sneaky interesting. Tweeted this last night. Leonardo Santos and Roman Bogatov. Gugabe, you want to lead this one?
I think Santos' submission at plus 500 is probably the angle here. He is 40 years old. He's fought for 2 minutes in 5 years? So, if it just turned into... And Bogatov, he's not great, but at least he's initiative. Like, he'll just kind of throw himself at you.
Yeah.
So, but against the guy, well, that's all the age disparity. If Bogatov just keeps doing shit and Santos just turns out to only have 5 minutes of gas, I wouldn't be shocked. Like, there'd be nothing on tape, but there's definitely a possibility. But yeah, if Santos is clicking, he should just kind of dominate him everywhere because Santos is fucking good stylistically. Like, in terms of pure skill set, Santos is like top 5 lightweight essentially. He's just old as right,
and has volume issues, but he has good skills for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, probably good chance for Santos finish. But if Santos doesn't finish, I'd be having issues just because Bogatov is aggressive to a T and will take you down again and again. And like, what does Santos' cardio look like?
Yeah. No, we can talk about that. But Brett, you can talk about this fight a little bit. I bet you're somewhat interested in this from a DraftKings point of view. You probably like that ITD line of Santos. So, what are your thoughts here?
I am very interested in this fight, in part because wrestling scores so well on DraftKings, and what's his name? Bogatov is like kind of like Bartosz Fabinski light, I would say. Which really intrigues me, but I just can I think he could take Santos down. I just cannot see him doing anything once he gets Santos to the ground. What is he possibly going to do? I would be very, very surprised if Bogatov takes Santos down, holds him down, advances position, threatens for a submission. Like, from the regional tape that I've seen on Bogatov, his jiu-jitsu, I don't want to say it's bad.
It's not very good.
I am not convinced that it's UFC level. There was more than one exchange that I saw where his opponent really almost could have and should have taken his back, but they just didn't quite have it. And Leonardo Santos is a very, very good submission grappler, and the fear with Santos is that he doesn't really throw many strikes on the feet. He's a little bit difficult to trust in terms of his offensive wrestling production. He might come into this fight thinking, well, Bogatov's a wrestler, my advantage is on the feet, and he might not even look to land takedowns. But all Bogatov can do, from what I've seen, is, like you guys said, throw himself at people. And so I don't know what other choice Bogatov has here besides trying to take Santos down. So that's going to theoretically just force a high number of grappling exchanges. And if that is the case, I really think Santos can find his way into top position in a couple scrambles, and I think he can submit him as well.
I have a really similar the thing with Santos, I was kind of thinking just because generally he landed 23 strikes against Adriano Martins in a 3-round fight. So it's like, I don't even think he attempted a takedown. And if he did, it was one. Maybe he attempted one. I can't remember. But so pretty much no offense. And he has looked tired in previous fights, and they were a long time ago. So his age is obviously a concern. So and his cardio, because, statistically, when you get older, you lose more. That's just in the stats. But at least he isn't taking a ton of damage. I will say that. It's not like he has been even fighting that much. So, I mean, but that's just speculation. We have no idea. But I kept kind of thinking like, oh, Santos, he just has ways to lose almost to anyone, because he could just lose a striking fight if he doesn't wrestle. But then I was thinking Bogatov is going to do exactly what you guys talked about. He attempts, like I was counting how many takedowns he attempts. He attempts like 4 to 5 takedowns a round. So I just feel, and Santos is, not only is he good at jiu-jitsu, his wrestling's actually not bad either, just defensively. And I just feel like he could probably just reverse some type of position or just take Bogatov down himself if they clinch up or something. And Santos has never allowed a pass in his entire UFC career. So that's kind of the dilemma I was having when I was thinking about Bogatov. It's like, yeah, but I don't think he'll take advantage of the ways you can beat Santos by just winning like a low volume kickboxing fight. He's going to wrestle. And I just feel like that will almost force Santos to fight in the way that he should probably dominate in the grappling, And Santos is a dominant passer. I forget what it was, but I think he has like a 2-to-1 passing to takedown ratio. And I saw what Brett saw on tape. Like, I feel like Bogatov was getting it. Not only was he getting put in deep submission spots, when someone got on top of him at one point, his guard looked very easy to pass, at least from what I saw. And that's the thing. I just feel like Bogatov won't be able to do anything on the mat on top unless if Santos is just dead tired. But at least Santos, at least he grappled through fatigue well against Efren Escudero, even when he was tired. So maybe he's still functional late, even if it goes there, which honestly it would probably be enough. Like the round 3 I saw him against Escudero grappling would probably beat Bogatov pretty easily in a grappling fight. So that's kind of where I'm at too. I don't know if you guys want to add anything else.
Just the main consideration for me is that was 6 years ago. He is 40 years old.
Agreed. Yeah.
His debut was in 2002. Like, he hasn't fought much, but actually, just thinking, I think Dariush, I should have made Dariush versus Santos. I think that would have been a lot better as a matchup.
Yeah.
I am just scared to death of not playing Bogatov on DraftKings because he's so cheap, and watching him go out there and land 8 takedowns and, just even if he doesn't get that many advances. But at the same time, like, I just don't know. Is he just going to hold? Is he just going to stay in Santos' guard for several minutes? Like, he doesn't even throw much ground and pound from what I've seen. So it's just extremely difficult for me to trust. I think Santos. I would consider a bet on Santos at this price and even inside the distance, even though, like, traditionally he's not the type of fighter or the type of matchup that I would look to, just because his offensive production is limited and he's going against a fighter who's undefeated, processed, aggressive. I just feel like Santos' skills are going to be too much here.
Yeah, I hear Gugabe though. Like, because I just kind of want to see where the price goes to. Like, I didn't pull the trigger on Santos, but if I did decide to play him, like, age is very real.
Yeah.
And he is 40 now. And that's not a narrative argument. It's literally statistically shown that whenever you hit 40, you just lose more often. So, like, I would lower the bet just because of that.
Do we know
but go on.
Do we know if Anik's going to be the broadcaster here on Fight Island?
Yeah.
Because every time someone who's 40 years old comes in, he always says, he'll say Leonardo Santos is a man. He's 40, like from the Mike Grundy Oklahoma State joke from a while back. So at the very least, we get that.
Get old American
Fair
football.
enough. Yeah, I'm playing Santos sub 1 just because I feel like if he hasn't got the sub within a round, I just think we enter a strange place.
True.
Yeah.
Also, Bogatov is going to Hernandez. This fucker is just going to walk out for a minute, a massive haymaker, 30 seconds in.
Yeah,
and Santos dies.
I could see this being the classic situation where he just outperforms. He just like volume strikes Santos and boxes him up. And we've never seen it before. Like I could totally see something dumb like that happening here too.
He doesn't even outperform. He just throws a massive left hook 30 seconds in.
Yeah.
It's something like Hernandez Dariush, where it's like, all right, maybe Hernandez got better. And then, like, you've watched over 4 fights. Like, well, I don't think he did.
Yeah. No, I hear it. I agree, Brett, with kind of your description of the fight. Because I totally see the same thing. It's just like, is he really going to lay on top of him? But I see where Gugabe is coming from too. Shoot, hold on 1 second. I'm gonna grab my dog.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very difficult to trust 40-year-olds, and I think he's fought like twice since 2015 or something like that. So you never know. You never know when it's going to be time up for Santos.
For sure.
Yeah, he's a great talent. It's just it's just I usually play for Santos in the situation. I've been hit by it enough times. I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And I apologize if my dog is barking in this podcast. I'm holding him now, so sorry about that. But we got next fight, Vanessa Melo and Carol Rosa. Brett, what do you think here?
Well, Melo's pretty bad. And I think Rosa's better than her, but I'm not sure by how much. I'm obviously extremely, extremely intrigued by the fact that Rosa landed 171 significant strikes in 15 minutes.
She was landed on what, 164?
Yeah, but she gave up 165, A, and yeah. B, it almost feel, can we curse on this podcast?
Yeah.
It almost feels like some fight metric fuckery. I'm not going to lie, because like when have we ever seen especially women's fights, but 175 and 165 significant strikes in 3 rounds. I know it was an up-paced matchup, but I am like very, very hesitant to trust that that's real. I still think Rosa, you can project her to land more strikes, but and anything I've seen out of Melo, she's just so slow, so slow-footed, and I kind of feel like these girls are just gonna stand and trade though in the middle of the octagon, and I'll favor Rosa slightly, but it's not with much confidence.
Yeah. Speaking of significant strikes, is there an actual? Because I pay attention to DraftKings and a little bit, but I just don't invest money into it. But Is there a criteria for significant strikes now? Because it just seems like there can be some abuse of power in that situation.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because,
and I literally don't know the answer to this question.
Yeah, there's not really. The last time we asked someone at Fight Metric what the criteria was, they replied with like, quote, Google it, and then that sparked this big controversy of people saying, screw you, what do you mean Google it? Like, tell us the answer. Like, what is it? And, are you playing on DraftKings? And then I eventually found out that the guy was playing on DraftKings, even though he wasn't supposed to be. And then contact DraftKings about it. And so it sparked this whole intense controversy thing. There's no a strike from range, a power strike. It's just very inconsistent is the problem. Even if there's a definition, it's too inconsistent. And I remember the classic one was when Cormier had Volkan Oezdemir in a mounted crucifix and pounded him out, and they deemed that none of those strikes were significant. And I'm like,
it's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard.
So that's a long answer to your question. It's supposed to be like a power strike from range or in the clinch, but it's very inconsistent and seems to change on an event by event basis.
Yeah, I'll push it over to you, but I do have one thing as far as takedowns. Like, I've reffed all three styles of wrestling for a long time, and there's been times where I've kind of just tweeted out like that wasn't a takedown, and somehow like the guy who does it for Fight Metric, I think he just saw my tweet, right? I don't know who the guy is. I couldn't tell you who it was. And then we kind of argued. Like, I wasn't mean to him, but then he kind of like stopped talking. But we kind of got into it. And I was like, "There's no way." Like, I was like, I don't know. We can like discuss this if you want on my show or something. We can talk about the criteria. But then he kind of stopped talking. So I don't know.
They put themselves on a pedestal. Like, they think they are the elites because they get to score fights, and therefore anyone else who talks about it doesn't really know what they're talking about. That's kind of the general vibe you get from talking to any of those guys.
I would even concede the argument if they just explained a different criteria, but it's just in all three rules of Greco, folk style, and freestyle, that was not a takedown. But there are other styles of grappling, obviously. So if they like talk to me about it, I wouldn't be a dick, but they kind of shut me down. But sorry about that detour. Gugabe, what do you think of this meme fest? I'm sure you're just going to play the dog here, right?
Actually, no. Like, Rosa at least puts up volume. Like, yeah, the 6 strike thing was a bit silly because like she threw 6 non-significant strikes. That's personally, like, I've played a bunch of significant strike overs for various reasons in the last few years, and I've felt like
Andrade Rose.
Andrade Rose, like, we watched that the other day. I'm like, Rose throws several jabs, and every single land she had was significant. Whilst Andrade had like 10 non-significant strikes. And I was like, that makes no logic. Andrade has never thrown a jab in her life.
But also,
she lacks the capability.
Strike. If that didn't finish on that slam, I feel like you could have probably won that bet. I mean, we'll talk about that fight soon, though. But
yeah, she would have won by like 100 fucking strikes if she had gone 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. Like, I don't touch DFS too much. It's never really taken off in Australia. Like, there's been attempts to bring it in. It's just like, because we have mobile betting on normal sports, it's just like there's no niche for it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rose is at least high output, and like, I'll give what's her name, Melo, a bit of credit because she's fought some solid names at that level. Like, even Cortez isn't bad, but she got outstruck by Cortez, and like Rosa, she'll be busy and throw a ton of volume. I just can't really see what Melo does to stop that sort of volume.
Yeah, the only argument that I think I can make for Melo is she, Prosopia, whatever the fuck her name is, landed 122 of 244 significant head strikes. So, like, not only did she land a lot, she landed half of her head strikes, which is well above average if you are a numbers guy. And the funny thing is, Melo attempted 250 strikes against Aldana. So I wouldn't be surprised if Melo actually landed over 100 strikes here as well, because she landed I think she landed 68 significant strikes against Aldana, who has 63% striking defense, and who we're talking about, Rosa, is just way less than that, obviously. So like, I could see Melo landing more than maybe people think, and because I really think this is going to turn into a stupid, like, kind of back and forth high volume fight, and who the fuck knows is going to win. I don't think there's any value on Rosa, but I'm not really willing to invest in this situation either.
I think Melo's going to land too. It's just she's so slow, and she can't get off the cage that like all Rosa has to do is like move a little bit out of the way to avoid strikes, and that's like kind of so. Yeah, I can't wait for the winner of the $1 million to have both Rosa and Melo in their lineup.
Well, what's going to happen now, Brett, is Rosa is going to land like 300 total strikes, and there's going to be 50 deemed significant, and then we kick her off the optimal lineup, and then the guy at DraftKings is going to win the $1 million.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was considering playing some Rosa because she's priced like right in the territory of the 3 champions. With let me see, she is 9.2K, so she's priced between Ribas, Jan, Volkanovski, Namajunas, and Usman. So like literally no one is going to play her. But if she happens to do the same thing she did last time, she'll be on the winning lineup. So it's like sickening, but I could make a case.
Yeah, I could definitely see her putting up more points than Ribas. Like, I just feel like she'll probably just do more.
Depends what Ribas does. If Ribas grapples hard, she's going to pass a lot too. So, yeah. And more finishing upside. I don't know, Brett, if that's your read, but we'll get to that one.
We'll get to it.
Next fight, Amirikhani and Henry. I'll kind of go on this. I just think if you watch Henry on the regionals, he's not a very good grappler. And I actually think Amirikhani is a good grappler, and I still think what he did in the first round to Burgos was actually impressive because Burgos is very good defensively. Obviously, he gassed out later, but that's Shane Burgos. Like the resistance of the grappling and just kind of the pressure's different. Issue with Amirikhani is he doesn't land any distance strikes at all. So if he doesn't go to his grappling right away, which usually he does, I will give him credit for. Like usually he does go to that game, but against Fish Gold, I played Amirikhani there, well aware of his low volume, but he had generally demonstrated that he shoots like 5 takedowns or more a fight. And I really thought a lot of people, it was just kind of my eye in that fight. I just really thought Amirikhani was going to out-grapple Fish Gold, even though Fish Gold was, the black belt and all that. But he only attempted 2 takedowns in that fight. And Gugabe, I know you were on Amirikhani too, and it was kind of frustrating at the time. So I think that's kind of the issue because he doesn't land enough to favor him on the feet almost against anyone, even Danny Henry, because at least Henry will come forward and do shit, kind of like, what's his name? Bogatov. I mean, but Bogatov does shit as far as grappling goes, but I think you guys kind of feel my dynamic here. But Gugabe, what do you think?
Yeah, Mikani sub or ITD, like, if it goes to the decision, I think there's issues with Mikani's output, and he does gas. But like for me, like Amirikhani against who was it last time? Burgos. He showed like a lot of willingness to go straight for the sub in round 1 and that sort of stuff. Like he almost had Burgos. Yeah. If he does the same thing here, like Ige just completely embarrassed Henry, and like I said, Amirikhani's be a better grappler than Ige.
Henry on the regionals, there was a fight too. I forget which one. I can look it up. But Brett, you can talk about this fight while I look that up.
Yeah, I'm less confident than a lot of other people about Amirikhani in this spot, mostly because like he has horrific cardio, and that's like the main, if you're making a word cloud and you put a bunch of words and the biggest words are at the center that describe the person, it would be cardio, like right in the center. Like I don't know how you can trust Amirikhani at any price, really. I mean, he has, against Burgos, I was impressed with his takedown ability in the first few minutes, but he gassed out so horribly after about 4 minutes of that fight. I mean, we've already seen Danny Henry beat up someone
who gassed,
and I'm also not as sold that he's as bad of a grappler as people are making him out to be. I don't think he's like a great athlete, and I don't think he's as good of a grappler as Amirikhani, but like, Ige hurt him very badly with a punch before he jumped on his back. And so I'm not so sure how that affected it. It wasn't like a simple, he just took him down and took his back. He rocked him really badly, and then he submitted him, which could have had an effect. And also, the submission win over the Wadu and even some exchanges against Tamer. Like, it's not that he doesn't know what he's doing. So I could see Amirkhani landing a couple takedowns. He's also not really been an aggressive like finisher on the mat. He is absolutely more than willing to just play a guard game from what I've seen. So I have a lot of concerns. I mean, I think Amirkhani has upside. I think he could win by submission early, but I think there's just as good of a chance that he has some success with the wrestling, doesn't quite get the finish, and then gets tired. That scares me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair point. Only argument I would make against it, that I'm not going to play Amirkhani. Only argument I would make against it is I do think Burgos' resistance is a lot different from like a defensive point of view for the grappling. Yeah. But still, like Henry he seems to have good cardio. So that's like the counter argument. Yeah. But have you seen the Ageyu Cabeza fight of Henry?
Not recently, no.
I would check it out if I were you. Like, I mean, because there's nothing on Henry.
On YouTube?
Yeah, I can send it to you. I think it's his first fight. I mean, it was like 2017 or something, but it's really the only time we really saw him. And I think the grappling dominance, I think your opinion would change at least a little bit as far as like the upside for Amirkhani, because there's nothing in the UFC fights of Henry that really concerns me that much against Amirkhani, because like the Ige thing was just kind of a quick club and sub type of thing. But this was a fight that made me kind of think Henry's going to get badly out-grappled. But I do still think the cardio concern is very legit. But if you want to just check that out at some point, because I do think it's relevant for the fight, but we can move on. Go on, Gugabe.
That's almost why I kind of lean playing the sub or the RTD lines, just because I feel like if it goes past 7 minutes, you just don't know what you're getting, but there's a good chance that Amirkhani just wipes him out if he's going to win. Yeah. It's like Santos to me. It's like, I just don't want to deal with, like, I'd rather not take money line because I'm having to deal with what happens if it goes to the decision. Like, I got minus 140 Amirkhani very early just because I just saw the line and I was like, what the fuck? And Bobby edged it off. I don't know, see how it feels.
Yeah, for sure. He's not the best finisher. He's got some good little like front headlock chokes, but that's kind of it. So I agree with Brett there too. But Paiva and Zhumagulov, I tape this. I'm familiar with Zhumagulov because I just know a lot of those Fight Night Global guys. Gugabe, what do you think here?
Zhumagulov's kind of been edging fights regionally. He seems pretty fun. It's flyweight. Nobody's awful. He seems functional, but I'd kind of just lean Paiva. I think Paiva's game's a bit more vicious. His striking's definitely stronger.
Yeah.
Probably a closest decision, but I just think Paiva's got a lot more players to win than, I guess.
Yeah, we can kind of speed up on this fight just because I know we're going to talk a lot about the upcoming ones. But Brett, anything to add here?
Yeah, not much. I think Paiva's more dangerous, I would say, and he's probably got the better chance to out-grapple Zhumagulov. But I think if this goes 15 minutes, I think like Zhumagulov is like really is pretty functional. I kind of think Paiva's maybe still a little bit overrated. Like he kind of got outstruck by Mark De La Rosa in that first round.
Weren't the distance strikes 45, 44, like in general too? Like it was, yeah.
Paiva, 45 to 44. And in that first round, it was 22 for De La Rosa and 17 for Paiva. And I think people kind of just overlook it because of the finish, which is not the worst thing in the world. But if this fight goes 15 minutes, I think Zhumagulov has a pretty decent chance of winning. But I also think his kind of only path to victory is a close decision, which is hard to rely on.
Yeah, I just a few things to add in, and then we could just quickly move on. Funny, Paiva actually has a negative striking ratio, and it's mostly because he got outstruck on the Contender Series by like 20, 30 strikes. But I do still think like outstriking Kai Kara France is pretty impressive because I think Kai Kara France is just a pretty good hit you more than he hits you or than you hit him type of striker. But then again, like Brett said, I do worry a little bit about De La Rosa kind of competing on the feet. But Paiva does have a massive size advantage here. So that's one thing to at least, I think he's got like a 4-inch height advantage. So I do think that is something that is definitely helpful for him at least. But yeah, I could see this being a scrappy decision, but I don't really know what to think of Paiva yet. I just kind of think I need to see more of him, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seems fine. He's reasonably aggressive. He's got good power for flyweight, but just lacks a real dominant area of his game. Like even against De La Rosa, like he was definitely winning the striking, but it was more because he just hit harder.
Yeah.
Than because like he was putting like a skill thing on him. Like yeah, I think Paiva will be fine at flyweight. I think there's definitely some fun fights for him. He just seems like a mid-tier flyweight, and like yeah, it's flyweight. Nobody's absolutely awful at flyweight apart from Brandon Royval.
Yeah, pretty much. And like Paiva's striking defense is just not that great also, even just statistically. But that's kind of, I don't know. I just kind of think that's a whatever fight. Oezdemir and how do you say this guy's name?
Jerry Prochazka, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm familiar with Prochazka. He's actually fought a lot of like washed up vets, like CB Holloway and like that. I'm just high on Oezdemir overall, especially lately. I was impressed by his last couple performances. He just puts up volume. He comes forward. He seems durable. And I just trust his process probably a little more. I do need to tape a little more of, I'm just going to call him Jury. That's what I'm going to call him. I have no idea how to say his last name. But Jury, I just feel like I need to go back and watch him a little bit, but even like Holloway was outstriking him at times, and I feel like he relies a little bit on moments, but I mean, he obviously this could be a high variance shit. Like either guy could land a knockout here. But I do think I'm a little uninformed on Jury other than just me knowing who he is, because I have to go watch his stuff a little more. I just didn't tape enough to really see how they match up specifically. But Brett, what do you think here?
Yeah, I think that Oezdemir is more powerful and more durable. So those are two big advantages he has. I was actually pretty impressed with Prochazka with his hands. Like I think he's like, I'm not even convinced that Oezdemir's a better boxer. Like I think Prochazka is pretty damn good. His hands are very fast, a good combination striker, but that's kind of all he does. And I wouldn't consider him the most powerful fighter. And he also, kind of fights with his hands down, concerns me a little bit. So I think if there's a knockout here, it's much more likely to be on the side of Oezdemir. But I would really not be surprised if, Oezdemir was kind of having a little bit of trouble chasing him down, and Prochazka was just having some success with his hand speed.
Maybe I'm misremembering Prochazka, because this is like one of the 3 fights I still have to tape, and maybe I just have to tape him a little more, because I'm just like, for some reason I'm thinking him as like a KO or bust type of guy, but I honestly am probably wrong. I
mean, that's what his record is pretty much all knockouts, I think, which is even though I don't actually consider him to be that powerful. So that's kind of where the discrepancy lies. But also, this is a fighter who I'm not like yet ready to just look at his regional tape and say, oh, okay, this is exactly how he's going to fare in the UFC. Like I need to see him step up in competition to make a better read. Yeah.
And like, Oezdemir's still like, even against Rakic and Reyes, who I both think are good, the fact that he could just keep it super razor thin with them means he probably has a high floor here. That's at least kind of the way I'm looking at it. Where Gugabe, I know you're into this, where Prochazka could look awful. Like his floor could be is probably lower. I mean, he might not be there, but we don't know But that's kind of just my like high level type of thoughts about it before really researching it. But Gugabe, what do you think here?
Oezdemir is weird to me. Like coming up, I wasn't big on him, particularly when he had that kind of original run where he just knocked people out in 40 seconds again and again.
Yeah.
Last 2 fights, he's looked solid. Even against Smith, he looked solid. Main issue I see here is that against CB Holloway, Prochazka couldn't check a leg kick to save his life.
Yeah.
And Oezdemir throws leg kicks. So it's like, I think that makes him KO or bust. Like, pretty much, that just, you know, it's like the leg kick, like Oezdemir is a frequent leg kicker. And, yeah, Prochazka he had no idea what he was doing against leg kicks. So it's like, with that sort of leg kick differential, I just can't see how Prochazka wins the decision unless Oezdemir just either chaos gasses or just forgets to throw leg kicks. Yeah,
I did note that point as well. I did note that that Oezdemir could eat him up with leg kicks. Like, I wish Oezdemir would like strike a little bit more functionally though. Like he doesn't really even like throw jabs very often, and yeah, that's my only concern is that he might just be like kind of chasing Prochazka down, looking for power strikes.
Yeah, 100%. I just feel like he'll probably throw like if it's 15-minute fight, I think he'll throw at least 30 leg kicks just because usually he does.
Yeah.
And like just based off Prochazka's leg kick defense, like he might keep his head away from Oezdemir, but I don't think he'll keep his legs away from Oezdemir.
Yeah.
Yeah, leg kicks are usually the most consistent strike in my opinion, just because like people seem to have a very clear delineation that some people can deal with them, some people can't, and they're so easy to hit like from range. So that's kind of my main issue with Prochazka. Oezdemir, yeah, I think Prochazka, if he's going to win this, is probably going to be like a fight to the death inside 3 minutes. Just because I feel the leg kick issue is just so big.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at his his leg strikes right now. Yeah, but I'll definitely keep that in mind because I think seeing like leg kicks and stats on leg kicks can really help when just kind of predicting a fight.
Yeah,
kind of just like it can give people high floors. Kind of like why I thought, what's his name, who we're talking about soon, Volkanovski had a legitimate chance against Holloway. I thought the first fight, you know, like I thought that fight was going to be really close. But yeah,
like Oezdemir probably beat Rakic off that weird shin pregnancy, which I don't think is going to happen again. But
yeah,
he threw 21 against Rakic, 12 against Reyes, 9 against Latifi in a whooping. Yeah, so he does throw them, and it's like heavyweight, so he throws them pretty hard.
Yeah, he's not like Volkanovski volume leg kicks, but at least he does throw them.
Every fight he's thrown at least like 10, or he throws them, say, like 1 a minute, kind of.
Yeah,
and against Oezdemir and against Smith and Rakic, he threw 20 into each three-round fight, which I think was fairly significant. And just the sheer success Holloway was having with them. It's not like Holloway is historically a big leg kicker. Yeah, like Jury just looked like he had no idea what to do against leg kicks, which is just I feel like Oezdemir will notice that and will throw them.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now moving on to the main card. Man, we've been talking for a while, but this, and I'm sure we have a lot of shit to say about these fights, but Andrade and Rose, Brett, you take the lead on this. I don't feel like I have so much to say that I'm hoping other people just cover it.
All right. Well, so I bet Andrade in the first fight.
Same.
And I was pretty high on her, and I think there are a couple distinct differences in this fight, which is making me like her a lot less. The 3 rounds, also I think it being in Brazil the first time was a big help for Andrade, and now being in neutral territory in 3 rounds, I'm picking Rose to win now, and I still think the obvious paths to victory for Andrade are still there. Her pressure, her volume, her wrestling. Rose questionable, mentality or however you want to term it. But there's just no way that I can pick Rose to lose the first round. And I think there's an even better chance she wins by knockout early than there was in the first fight, just because we've seen Andrade now hurt badly a couple times. So it now becomes a situation of, well, Andrade doesn't have rounds 4 and round 5 where she's still going to be there and Rose is going to be very tired. Now she basically, in my opinion, has to win rounds 2 and rounds 3 or win inside the distance. And it's still viable, but I kind of feel like the fight's almost dependent on at what point Rose gets tired, because we're not going to see a slam KO again. And I would be surprised if she tries to use that stupid Kimura trap to defend takedowns. So I just, because I favor her so strongly in round 1, I feel like she therefore kind of is more likely to win this fight. And it still could be very close, but no, the odds are still I'm surprised the odds are so wide just based on the first matchup.
Yeah, Gugabe, go ahead. I'm sure you're going to say a few things that I'm probably thinking too. So,
rewatching the first fight, I feel like Rose's round 1 success is overblown a bit. Like the margin of strikes is only 6 strike difference. Rose hurt her with a knee in the clinch, which came out of nowhere, which is a nice knee, but like it wasn't like the punches were really rattling Andrade that bad. So I kind of think the punches are more consistent. And also, like, the one takedown the Andrade got, Rose almost got the armbar sub off, and I'm like, always, guard subs as takedown defense aren't really something I'm looking to buy. Yeah, I think Andrade, good chance that she just runs over again. Like, there's an issue with Zhang being, that Zhang locks in first round KO, but, like, I think Zhang punches a lot harder than Rose. And it's just, I feel like Rose, it was a very small margin, and I feel like just how she had the success in round 1 isn't as replicable as people think it is. And just generally, Andrade, like, there's recent pictures of her, and she looks like she's glowing green, frankly. So she's clearly got back into the medicine cabinet, which is good for her. I'm still like amazed that Andrade was given total strike. Like, I rewatched that fight the other day, and like Rose threw jabs, Andrade did not throw jabs, but nonetheless, every Rose strike was significant. Because fuck you, because fuck me, why not?
Yeah, I am on board with pretty much everything both of you guys said. The one thing, though, I just think this fight's going to, kind of like what Brett said, it will come down to when Rose slows down. And I just think it's kind of who wins round 2. Because as much as you favor round 1 for Rose, Brett, I favor Andrade pretty heavily in round 3. And just kind of like put it into context. So like in a 5-rounder at this price, I would play Andrade for sure at plus 170 easily. Yeah. I would play it again too, even after what we saw the first time, because, and just to put this into context, like I do think Rose can win this fight. I think she could have finished her in that first round. But the thing is, if you look at Torres Andrade, just to kind of use it as like an archetype almost of how a 3-rounder like this could play out. It's like Torres outlanded Andrade 49-39 and outstruck her at distance 44-26. And Andrade went 1 of 3 on takedowns, right? So then round 2 was a bit closer, and it was 16-16 in significant strikes. But Andrade went 4 of 4 of takedowns, so obviously Torres was slowing down a little bit, right? And then in round 3, Andrade outlanded her 37-4 and went 5 of 5 on takedowns. So like, just look, I mean, she literally lost 10 minutes before in round 1. And then she literally 10-8'd her in round 3. And so imagine if Andrade fought Torres in a 5-rounder, like some of the scorecards we would have seen, right? And so like, I just think that same dynamic, it ended in round 2, so we didn't get to see it play out. But I really think Andrade would have ran over her later. But I mean, we're never really going to know unless if we just see it in round 3 badly, which I'm kind of hoping. I kind of want this fight to play out. I want to see it play out in 3 rounds, but I really think it's going to be who wins in round 2. So I think this is a coin flip personally, but it's interesting. In a 3-rounder, I think it's a coin flip. In 5-rounder, I favor Andrade just because of how big her round 3 and on would be. But what's interesting is I feel like even though there's value on Andrade, it's just if you don't play her and you wait till after round 1, I live bet Andrade at plus 360 after round 1 in their first fight. And I had her pre-fight, obviously. And it's just, you probably will get maybe even a better line and mitigate that early KO risk. But so like, I feel like it's kind of, I think it's Andrade or pass and look for a live betting opportunity. I would not play Rose at this price because I don't think she's going to win round 3. And if you're minus 200 and I think you lose round 3 at a pretty high clip, I'm just a little worried. And I just think the takedowns are going to be there late. And they were coming easier. They came easier in round 2, obviously. And Rose just doesn't have good takedown defense either. It's below 50. And I just feel like Andrade will eventually start landing those and kind of really punish her late. So it's like, it's interesting because a lot of scenarios could play out, right? You could get that early finish for Rose. But if not, I think round 2 is going to be super important. So that's kind of what I think.
Yeah. Also, the attritional striking edge here. Like the first fight, Andrade was 30 attritional strikes to 1, which cardio. Also, I kind of like the draw here. Just like you can get draw at like plus 8,000 or something. I just think they're both live for 10-8.
No, for sure. If there's a draw, this could be it. Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it's a lock or anything, but like, I'd price draw a lot tighter than plus 8,000.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lottery ticket thing, but I mean, if there is a draw to kind of guess at, it would probably be a fight like this, you know, even though it probably won't happen.
Yeah, but I mean, both are, round 1, Rose live, 10-8's live, and round 3, Andrade is very live. So it's like, might as well.
Yeah.
It's got an idea.
Yeah. And like, the other thing I guess I could point out is because the striking totals were close, actually. Like, people need to realize 55-49 for Rose. And then, so, I don't know, she was down -6 in the strike battle. Andrade, obviously, she didn't land nearly as hard of strikes, but she was +2 on takedowns. But I do want to point out that the head strike was dominantly in Rose's favor. It was 54-17. And Andrade kind of made up for it with body and leg strikes. So, and I do think head strikes are very important, you know, when it goes into the judges' scorecards and you have more of a chance at a knockdown. So that's like something I'll defend Rose on. But I just wish this was a 5-rounder because I would play Andrade again. But
yeah, and I agree with all your counterpoints, and I would favor Andrade pretty heavily in the 3rd round. Yeah. And it's just, like that first round was 29-6 head strikes in favor of Rose.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard to watch that and to watch her charge barrel first, into Zhang. And like, I just don't see how the early portion of this fight plays out differently. And
agreed.
And that is what's scaring me off. But like, I think we're all on the same page where if Andrade gets through the first half of the fight, she has a good chance to take over.
Yeah, that's why I think this is a good live spot. I mean, it already was the first time they fought.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what an actual extended grappling exchange looks like between these two. Like, we didn't really get one. We just got, like, the first one was almost a guard sub from Rose off the Kimura defense. And the second one was just Rose being slammed to death. I'm kind of curious what happens if they had, like, Andrade actually gets to, like, Rose's guard for a bit.
See, I think Andrade can do damage on top. I really do. And I think if that slam KO wouldn't have happened, she's probably going to win that 2nd round because it was already, like, getting more competitive, and she's probably on top. It's speculation, though. Yeah. Maybe Rose gets back up, but I just think Andrade is a beast on top, man. Like, I mean, she's shown it over and over. Like look what she did to just kind of Claudia, Tisha, and other fighters. So,
yeah, the way she mauled Gedalia down the stretch was insane.
Yeah,
like Gedalia can grapple. Like, Gedalia is a good grappler and everything. And like Andrade in round 3 was just throwing her around.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like my view of it was like a 1-strike margin coming into the takedown. Assuming the takedown turns into like 30 seconds of top control and say 5 significant strikes. Probably that what turns into
on top too, which can swing. That swings. That's a more important takedown when someone throws ground and pound because they can swing the round.
Yeah, like my part of my view was like, what if Andrade just gets a takedown in round one and just holds it down for a minute? Like, I feel like people aren't quite paying off the early takedowns as much as they could.
Yeah,
because,
and her escape on that takedown, Rose's, was kind of random. Do you remember that? Like, it was
the armbar.
Was it like a submission? I just remember the way she got up in round one. I felt like I kind of felt that same way. Like, I still favor Rose round one, but I do think Andrade even getting a takedown early could happen in like top time, like you said.
Yeah,
like I
mean,
bank on it, but I just think it could happen.
Yeah, she defended the slam of the Kimura from memory. Then she like got an almost armbar off the slam. And I'm like, how many of those does she realistically have?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we're all pretty much on the same page here. Early danger. And I still think, like, if you look at this line, the value, I really think it's pretty much a coin flip. But it's just, you can get more value on Andrade probably after round one. But Jan and Aldo, I think Jan's the rightful favorite, just on kind of pure volume and youth alone. But Aldo does historically have pretty good striking defense, but at the same time, he doesn't always land a lot. And he can kind of be beat up if you put a pace on him, you know? So, like, I think Jan's the rightful favorite. But, like, other than that, I really don't have all that much to say about this fight, even though it's a title fight. But, Brett, what do you think here?
Yeah, I'm not as high on Yan as the public, I would say. Though I'm not high on Jose Aldo either. The thing is, like, do you think Aldo can win a decision?
It would need Jan to have taken off the first 2 rounds and then like a late Aldo knockdown or something. Like, Jan can take off the first 7 minutes like fairly consistently, so maybe that's really the only path I could see. Like, if Jan is actually putting on volume, I can't see how Aldo neutralizes it.
Because, like, if Aldo can't win a decision at any reasonable rate, then he should be a big underdog here. Because I don't think he knocks out Yan at any sizable clip. But, like, I don't know, and I still go back and I watch that fight with Jimmy Rivera where people have different opinions. I feel like Jimmy Rivera was pretty much winning the majority of that fight outside of the big moments, and that's fine, and Ian deserved to win because of the big moments, and he might have big moments against Jose Aldo, but beating up Uriah Faber and losing the majority of the fight to Jimmy Rivera and getting knocked down by John Dodson, doesn't scream like, oh, this guy is the best fighter in the world to me. I like him. I like his aggression. I like his boxing, but he's a little bit of a headhunter. And typically those types of fighters don't, have a ton of success against Jose Aldo. Like, I don't quite compare Peter Yan to Max Holloway. So I don't know. I'm a little hesitant on both sides, quite honestly.
Yeah, Rivera outstruck him too, like on the numbers. I forget exactly what they were, but I think it was like 70 something to 50 something. So, like, yeah, I mean, he won on the big moments. But I was impressed by the Dotson fight, though. Just kind of how he cage cut and kind of beat him up. But I don't know.
Dotson's still great.
I do like youth and pace in general, and Jan at least has that, and I feel like that could really come into play against Aldo. But I understand your concerns, and he is mid minus 200s, so yeah.
I've got Jan to win and fight to start round 3 at plus 118, which I like. But yeah, I'm not touching money line. And I've got some ends by KO too. I feel like Aldo's kind of confined to the early KO, but Jan is hittable, and I just don't like how he can take a while to get kicking. Like, even against Paiva, he did fuck all in round 1. And like Jinsu's son beat him in round 1 just because Son was big and aggressive. That was a great fight, though. I did enjoy that.
Yeah, it was a funny fight. Yeah, like, I get it. I'm okay with the line, though, honestly. Just because Aldo, Like, Aldo, it's just, even if he limits strikes here, he doesn't land any.
Yeah.
He could fight great and lose a split decision, kind of like against Moraes. And I'm not just saying that in that fight. I just feel like he has the fighting style for that, where if he doesn't knock you out, at least the opponent's floor is a split decision, even if Aldo does well, you know?
I'm really considering being underweight to the field on Yan on DraftKings because he's priced at 9.3K. So the only fighter more expensive than him is Ribas, and like I get that he could win, inside the distance, but so many fighters priced under him also could. And I also think that there's a chance that Aldo kind of just limits exchanges early on in the fight to the point where even if Yan knocks him out late or wins a decision, I don't know that it's going to be a Usman Covington type scoring decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, Aldo could just wipe him out inside a round.
He could. I don't know.
I think an Aldo win is most likely just like a very quick knock. It is like quite a quick knockout.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, but I'm never. I haven't really been on Aldo for years, so anytime he wins by knockout still surprises me.
Yeah, fair. I mean, Stevens one was great. I mean, that sort of heavyweight resurgence, he just has some random knockouts. I got Pop Idol for 2 minutes to deal with something, so back him up.
Okay, cool. Gugabe has to go for like 2 minutes, Brett, so we can just kind of continue on. Probably a good time for him to leave anyway. For Ribas and VanZant, I think Ribas should wipe the floor with her. I got in on her early, just kind of like on a quick little parlay, even though I don't like to do parlays much because they're kind of dumb. But yeah, like, do you have anything to add here?
Not too much. I mean, we talked about this early in the year. Like, Ribas over VanZant was one of the fights that I was eyeing even in like January. I had a really good read on Ribas then, and I'm a little bummed that she then fought Marcos, and I think that obviously inflated her line here. I think I think Ribas might like just destroy her, quite honestly, especially if she looks to grapple, and I'm not 100% sure that she will, because her striking's not poor, but like just watching Rachel Ostovich kind of manhandle Paige VanZant, I think if Ribas attempts takedowns, she's going to get them, and I think if she gets them, she's going to take her back, and I think there's a good chance of a submission.
Yeah, so she Paige has been passed, what was it, like 20 something times in her career? Like, it was like near 30. I think it might have been 30. So yeah. I do not like that for her grappling chances here, because
I mean, she got taken down 4 times and gave up 4 advances against Rachel Ostovich in 6 minutes. And that, like, Ribas is just so much better of an athlete and like a dangerous submission fighter, in my opinion. And I do not trust VanZant's style or game in 2020. I think she's, done. Not that she ever was a high level fighter, but I don't think she's really ever coming back to be a fighter who can win at a moderate rate at the UFC level. I think it's Ribas. I think Ribas deserves the line.
Yeah, and then Gugabe, you don't need to jump in on this fight if you don't want to, but just to end it, from a DraftKings point of view, I would imagine the worry here is like, I mean, I'm sure Ribas I'm sure you're gonna play her and have heavy exposure to her, and I'm sure she'll be very popular. But I feel like if she doesn't grapple, it could be a little nerve-wracking, just as far as like scoring, even though she could still maybe score well if she doesn't grapple like a ton. But if she went to grappling, she's almost guaranteed to crush it. Like, nothing's a guarantee, but I just feel like the passing and finishing upside is there.
Yeah, the biggest problem with her, sorry, Gugabe. The biggest problem is that she's the most expensive fighter on the slate. So
Okay.
you can pay a lot less for Amirikhani, for Santos, for Usman, for Namajunas, for Volkanovski, Rosa, for Yan. So, and if you're paying all the way up, you're going to have to play cheap underdogs probably. So I don't actually know if I'm going to end up with a lot or if the public's going to end up a lot, just because there's so many good options priced below her.
Yeah, fair enough, and that's why I shouldn't talk about DraftKings, because that makes sense now that you mentioned I don't even know the salaries. I'm just kind of throwing shit out there. But
I think there's two big prop markets here. You can get Paige VanZant wins by armbar, or Paige VanZant wins by triangle. I haven't quite done enough tape to decide which of the two, but karma dictates that whoever steams this hard gets where WMA guards up. That's just how life works. You have too much CLV.
Paige VanZant with a flying scissor head kick like she did against Beck Rawlings would be hilarious, even though I would lose money, just because everyone would lose money and it would just be a hilarious moment. But
you have too much CLV. You have too much CLV. You are fucked. I'm just looking at this line. I'm just like, I haven't touched it at all because I'm just not that high on Ribas.
I got in on a parlay when she was minus like 400, like months ago. So, and she has to close me out, and it pays out even money. So I'm in like decent, or not even money, but -1 something. So
Ribas is going to come out and imitate Travis Brown and get knocked out inside 2 minutes. And I'm going to put on record, my prediction is that Amanda Ribas is a bum, and you cannot trust a bum. So I would like to list my support of Paige VanZant against CLV.
Right, Gugabe doesn't like Ribas. It's kind of just like a stubborn part of him. He's just kind of annoyed by it. Just so you know. Like I'm high on her, and I think you are too, but I think Gugabe is just, I don't know if he's...
I have no strong feeling. I have no strong feeling either way, honestly.
What's that?
Well, when Paige VanZant comes in at 5% owned on DraftKings and the Millie Maker, I'll know that all 5% is Gugabe's lineups.
Yeah, pretty much.
I have no strong opinion, honestly, but I feel like it'd be hilarious if there's this level of staying lost. Just my pure negativity, hating, player hater of the year sort of hat on.
Moving on to the next fight, and Brett, I'm a DraftKings amateur, but I'd imagine this is probably the easiest target from a DraftKings point of view on the slate, just because, I mean, I'm sure if Max wins, he'll crush, you know? And these guys landed how many significant strikes in the first fight? It was like 160 to 140 or something like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, honestly, if Holloway loses, he might still end up on the winning lineup, which is why he's going to be very popular. And I mean, you're right. And if this was the only title fight on the card, then it would be, 100% lock and load no matter what. There are a lot of high upside fighters on this card that we've talked about, so that's kind of the only asterisk. But this is a phenomenal fight from real life, from DraftKings, whatever. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I feel like there's a really good chance the fight just kind of plays out like it did the first time. And, I think that Max could be more aggressive and throw in a higher volume, because when he attempted the most strikes, that's when he looked the best. That's when he had the best chance of winning rounds. So that's, I think, his path to victory. He's not gonna be, the leg kicks are still there, and Volkanovski's still got the power edge, and Volkanovski's still got the wrestling edge. But Max can win this fight. I just don't, it's easy for me to sit here and kind of tell him what to do, but I don't really know if he's what adjustments he might, think he needs, or if he's gonna approach the fight any differently, or if he's gonna try and check leg kicks or any of that sort. So I feel like we could see a very, very similar fight, potentially a bit even higher paced, though.
Yeah. I think if Holloway's making the correct adjustment, it will be to prolong exchanges as much as possible. Like, he had most of his success when he created deeper exchanges and when he really forced the fight. I actually like the RTD here a bit too, just because I feel like if Holloway's doing the right thing, there's a good chance it forces a finish. And I don't think Holloway's chin is what it used to be. Like, he's still obviously very durable, but just his reactions lately haven't been as, like, against Aldo, he just took nukes and didn't notice. Of these days, he takes a nuke, he blinks a bit, then he gets back to it. But yeah, I kind of favour Holloway in the RTD here. Just, I feel like if Holloway's making the correct adjustments, it will turn into a massive war. And I think there's a decent chance that Holloway can just sort of win the cock measuring contest. But depends what he's trying to do. Like, I just think that's probably Holloway's best part of the victory. It's trying just to go, all right, we're going to swing to death. We'll play durability against durability. And like the first fight it was clear Volkanovski win, but the margin was actually still quite tight.
It was
like Volkanovski put up like 100 extra significant strikes. It was like what 10 or 20 margin, wasn't it? If that.
It was 157 to 135. I'll talk about the numbers in a bit too.
Yeah, so it wasn't like Volkanovski completely dumpstered him. So I just feel like if Holloway makes the right decision, it will favour both the ITD and the Holloway money line. Just I feel like it's quite a close fight regardless. And really coming forward will help shut down the leg kicks a lot too.
Oliver, stop. Sorry, hold on. But okay, I'll go real quick. This is kind of what I thought. Like first fight, I really thought the value was on Volkanovski, and I thought just people were kind of underrating him. I do think Volkanovski just tends to outperform just in general, just his line and everything. I don't know if that means anything here because we've seen the fight, so it's likely the bookies did a pretty good job at lining it. And I agree with him being the favorite. Just the fact that I just think he does have a high floor here in general because he landed 75 of 93 leg kicks. So he's just going to, like, that's such a consistent strike that's going to be there. Like I just think he's going to almost always, if this goes 5 rounds, land 50, and like possibly a lot more. And he obviously landed 75 last time, but even just having like 50 free strikes in a 5-round fight is very important for like your floor, in my opinion. But the thing is, like, I wouldn't play now. I would say like I wouldn't play his line because really that fight, the last 2 rounds, like 2 judges did give it to Holloway, and I did think those were pretty competitive. And this is just a high variance striking fight. And I know no knockdowns happened, but if a knockdown happened, I just could see this also being a fight where like knockdowns could randomly happen now because whenever you land a combined 300 strikes, knockdowns can happen, and I'm surprised like none of them happened in the first fight. So like that is another wrinkle that kind of scares me off Volkanovski. But I do like his floor just because I feel like the leg kicks will always be there. And like I said, another thing, Holloway landed 85 of head strikes to 67 of Volkanovski. So like that's a lot of head strikes landing, and 1 knockdown could have won Holloway the fight in rounds 1 to 3. I know that's like easy to say that, but knockdowns can happen at any point. So he was really just kind of like something like that from winning the first fight, even though I thought Volk clearly took those rounds, but this is high variance and striking. I'm just kind of like making arguments against Volkanovski's line right now, even though I'm not really interested in Max either. I think the line's fine. But then the other thing I do want to say, as far as adjustments go, I'm not like a technique striking guy, more of a grappling guy. But from a numbers point of view, it's funny. Holloway won the last 2 rounds, and he landed 9 and then 14 body strikes. And in the first 3 rounds, he only attempted 4 body strikes each round, and he landed 4, 2, and 3. And then he attempted 11 in round 4 and landed 9. And then he attempted 21 in round 5 and landed 14. So I'm just saying, like, that could be a random just adjustment statistically that could matter in a fight like this. Like I have I need to kind of go rewatch those rounds. And I don't know if you guys saw something on tape, but that could have been maybe something that he saw and started doing just because it is statistically in the numbers. And maybe if he attempts more body strikes, he can win this fight. That's all I'm saying.
He starts way too slowly is one of the reasons I have. It's just, again, in the 4th and 5th round, he was, it was not only attempting more body strikes, it's just more attempting more strikes in general, and you know, he was almost a little bit like shell shocked in the first round and didn't kind of know what to do, and then he switched stances, and I think he just kind of needs to come out hot right out of the gate, and I don't know that he will, but I think that would definitely benefit him.
Yeah, I mean, he did attempt more strikes in general too, like you said, in kind of rounds 4 and 5. So
against Aldo the second time, he came out a lot quicker than the first time. But the issue is, once again, Volkanovski just randomly redesigns himself between every fight. Like, I've been against Volkanovski a lot, and every fight he just randomly rebuilt. Like, I'm capping the last Volkanovski I saw, and then he just comes in as a completely different guy. And it's like, well, I mean, credit to him, but it's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like he could just take a totally different approach to Holloway. He could like be wrestling Holloway. He could be doing something else. Like, who the fuck knows?
Said he wants to finish him, so I don't know. Maybe he goes out there and I still don't think he's gonna have much success wrestling, and yeah, maybe he headhunts more, but
yeah, I think this is gonna take place on the feet again. That's just the way I see it. I think they both know that too.
Like, I felt the Volkanovski that fought Mendes was going to struggle against Aldo. Then he completely redesigned what he was trying to do. And yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I don't think he's got that much space to redesign. I feel like what he did the first time is such a good idea that like he probably will do the same thing again. But like, if he just randomly decided that he was going to put 20 takedowns on Holloway or something, I'd be like, all right, fair enough. This is just how Volkanovski rolls.
I just don't think he'll be able to grapple. Like, Max is really.
Oh, he shouldn't be able to. Yeah, I agree. If he just suddenly decided he could do it and it was now his game plan, he pulled it off, and like magical Volkanovski transformation powers, fuck.
I think we're just going to get a competitive fight. I mean, I easily could not see it too. You never know, but I could see just Max coming out a little hotter, and this kind of like, I think the inside the distance at like +170. What is it? I'm not playing it or anything, but if you like props, like, I just could see that's just a lot of strikes that landed, and I could just see this getting a little wild. I don't know, and that's a decent line, and it was way different the first fight. It was I forget what it was lined, but the line was way worse, So
Holloway RTD is like +440 or +440 in one book I'm at, which I like. I feel like if they do end up cock measuring, I think I would trust Holloway to win that.
Yeah, I just feel like it's just going to be high variance if that happened. I just feel like that's just still a lot of exchanges even in the first fight, and I know no knockdowns happened or anything, but it's more of a hunch for me though, and just like an observation that a lot of strikes landed.
And Holloway's chin's got to go eventually. Like, he's not taking punches as well as he used to. He's not getting knocked out yet, but I do think it's definitely on the cards.
Yeah, it could happen. He's been some wars, but we'll end on this point on this question, Brett. Do you suggest kind of stacking these fighters in like a tournament or playing head to head or cash? Probably not tournament, but
it's funny because I would say like probably the most common question I get every week about whether or not to stack fights in cash games. I would say like a 1,000,000% yes. Like, there would be no circumstance. Like,
have it,
like you are, and it's not even whether or not it works out. Like, if you don't stack this fight in cash games, you are not performing optimally. It's just the floor and the ceiling are just way too high. So cash games 100%, that's head-to-heads, 50-50s. Tournaments, generally no. I would say a couple times a year, like twice per year, there's a stack that ends up on the winning tournament lineup. And actually, last week was one of those occasions, but nobody had it. No one had the perfect lineup, even though there was 10 fights.
Oh, wow.
Which was surprising. A lot of people, tied for first place, and they had Dustin Poirier, but Hooker scored like 100 points as an underdog, and you would have had to take out Brendan Allen, who was, I think, the most expensive fighter, and swap him straight for Dan Hooker, while also still keeping Poirier. So you would have had to leave a ton of money on the table. That actually would have won first place, but no one had it. To be quite honest, I think you can stack this fight in tournaments, but it kind of comes down to how how live you think the other underdogs are that are cheap, like VanZant, Aldo, Melos, Andrade, Masvidal, Bogatov. Like, if you think those fighters are live, then there's not as much reason, I would say, to stack the fight. But I do think it's more viable just because of the floor and Volkanovski scored 109 points in his last fight against Holloway. Holloway scored 67. I think we could see higher on both sides. It's not absolutely crazy in tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I think that answers my question. And finally, moving on to the main event, and fight just got made. I know these guys well. I do want to tape a little more. I've been taping just a ton of the upcoming cards, just because, Brett, for like obvious. I mean, I know you bet a little bit. For like betting, you just have to beat some like of the lines sometimes,
Yeah.
So I'm a little behind on taping, but this fight, Usman and Masvidal, Gugabe, what do you think of this?
I give Masvidal a bit better shot than I gave Burns, because I feel like his cardio is better and he's more likely to pull out the magical KO.
Agreed.
But he is KO or bust, and I think like you probably get like a competitive round or two. It'll be like the RDA fight, where like competitive round or two. Then the last 10 minutes will just be Usman throwing him around in disgusting fashion. I kind of want to play Usman decision because Usman struggled to finish people who are completely blown out in the past. But knowing my luck, Usman will decide this is the time he actually finishes somebody.
Decision. Is that out yet?
I've got Usman. What was the price have I got? Sorry, put my thing up. GTD is plus 140 at the moment on my book, but it looks like the American book's open to the evens, which is free money, so I should go get that. I've got 3-4-5 a decision Usman, or 4-5 all by decision Usman at plus 137, which is my big lane. I think that's pretty solid. Yeah, I'm going to go pick off some slow Aussie bookies. So doing that
now. Cool. So Brett, I'm sure you're interested in Usman. He's a DraftKings god, I'm assuming. I don't know that for sure, but I'm just assuming. And what do you think here?
Yeah, I quite honestly, I haven't like fully researched this fight out of spite because I was so big on Usman against Burns.
Same.
And I'm more than a little bit disappointed that fight got canceled. I'm a little surprised that I don't know if you think this too, Tim, but that you view Masvidal as KO or bust, especially compared to Burns, because I just thought there was absolutely no possible way that like Burns was going to win a decision. I didn't really see how it was possible. Masvidal, at least his metrics check out. Like he doesn't.
Agreed.
Good striking defense, doesn't absorb strikes at a high rate, lands a lot more than he absorbs. Good wrestling defense. So I think Masvidal can make rounds competitive, and I almost think that he has less of a chance to win inside the distance than Burns, because he's not a submission threat, first of all, and I'm shocked when I look at this in hindsight. His last 5 victories are by knockout, but Ben Askren, Nate Diaz knockout, Jake Ellenberger knockout. Like I don't know that he
not the most durable guys.
Whereas
Diaz, like that was just like unanswered beating too.
And Burns is just so like wild, where it brings kind of a higher level of variance into play, where I feel like Masvidal might be a little bit easier to predict. Well, I guess they were training partners, so maybe not, but his style of fighting is a bit easier to predict. Yeah, like I said, I haven't like deep taped this. I would just on paper give Usman the advantages because I just saw him land 175 significant strikes in 5 rounds, and he can also go to the wrestling here, which I just think he's one of the best pound for pound fighters in the sport. He's going to be bigger than Masvidal. He was at least training for a 5-round title fight here. I'm not as sure what Masvidal was up to. I definitely favor Usman pretty significantly. I just haven't, quite nailed down whether he's some great value at the line, or whether the line's fair, or even whether he has elite, like do you, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on whether you think this fight will play out on the feet more or on the ground more.
I think it will early. Like, I honestly think it's gonna. I think Masvidal is gonna keep it standing in the first like round or two. I wouldn't be surprised if like a takedown landed or something, but I think generally Masvidal will be able to scramble back up early. But I do think like eventually, if the wrestling comes, it will be kind of later. And I honestly expect it to late, but I just think I think Masvidal is really hard to take down, and I think that Maia fight is a little different. Like if you watch round one, they were all like standing back takes with standing body triangles, and it was kind of Masvidal just fighting wrist control, because if he tried to explode out of that situation, he was going to get choked out, like Lyman Good or something. Like you can explode out of a situation with like Usman, I feel, and that's generally what Masvidal does. And I know that's not super numbers based, but generally Masvidal he has good takedown defense. I will at least counter that I think Usman's a better wrestler than anyone Masvidal has faced. But I also think Masvidal is harder to take down than a lot of people Usman's faced too. Like he probably has the best takedown defense out of anyone he's faced, I would say. Almost for sure. I would actually say that. I think Masvidal can keep it standing and be competitive for a round or two. I really do. Like I think he's going to make it interesting early, and I think it's going to be competitive early, but it's really hard to not favor Usman, because you got to favor him kind of probably later in the fight, and because he just has more offensive options. Because it wouldn't surprise me if Usman got the better of him striking, even, like especially over the course of a few rounds. Like I think Usman can win the striking exchanges, but so can Masvidal. But there's never going to be a world where Masvidal's out wrestling Usman, where there is a world where Usman does it. So that's why I favor Usman. But I honestly I think the line's fine. Like I think Usman should be, a decently sized favorite like he is. And I played Usman in almost every fight of his career, and even at minus 300 against the right guy, because it's truly KO bust. But I do think Masvidal can compete early, and I think he'll make it interesting for a bit. But that's kind of like my overall read on it. And I also do want to voice how sad I was whenever that fucking fight with Burns pulled out, because I had a lot of money on Usman at minus 185, so I'd beaten the line,
Yeah, I had the same price there too.
Yeah, I think we all had like minus 180 and all that. Like, there was a lot of good price flying around. I'm actually quite looking at the prop market. It's amazing how much the GTD, ITD's moved around for this fight. If you just look at it's been like 6 hours, and it's opened at minus 180 for GTD, peaked at plus 145, and is down back to evens.
Yeah.
So the early money just kind of kicking it around, which I find quite interesting for this little fight. I feel like GTD should be favoured, but I don't know.
Yeah. I just think Masvidal is going to land, and I do think it's going to stay on the feet early. So that's just why I kind of think Masvidal is going to keep it competitive early. This is just kind of the thing. But obviously, like I said, I still favor Usman later. But from a DraftKings point of view, Brett, I'm sure you got to have some exposure to a 5-round fight, right, with Usman.
Yes, especially because he's only 8.9K. So like, there's the people more expensive than him are Rose, Volkanovski, Rosa, Yan, and Ribas. So it's like it's not going to take that much for him to pay off. Like I still, I think there's a world where he could win this fight and not end up on the winning lineup. But I'm trying to think. I'd be curious, Tim, to hear what you think the floor of his offensive output is, even in like let's say a decision. Like if this fight goes 5 rounds, I would, off the top of my head, expect him to land, at least like 120 strikes and 2 takedowns. Like, do you see him? Do you see a floor much lower than that?
Yeah, no, I think that's about right. I do. Yeah, I guess the one worry is that Masvidal do passes count in DraftKings?
They do, yeah.
Masvidal hasn't allowed many passes in his day, so that's one thing. And he generally limits takedowns, and I do still think that the Maya takedowns, especially kind of early, were a little different. But over 5 rounds, you got to think Usman will land a couple, right? For sure.
Yeah, and even if he lands 120 strikes and 2 takedowns and no advances, that's 100 points. So like
for a win, right?
Yeah, for a win. So like even if he gets 1 or 2 advances, or if he gets I could see a world where he gets 5 takedowns, even if none of them really are super impactful. So there's just the floor and ceiling are so high on Usman, and the floor and ceiling are high on Masvidal in a victory too. It's just do you actually think he's going to win this fight? And I personally, I'm probably going to lean on the side toward no.
Yeah. I love Usman though, and I still think he's going to win this fight. I just do think Masvidal poses more threats than most people in the division. Not as much as Tyron Woodley, but obviously. But we all three were Usman backers in that fight, so I'm proud of that. But I don't know. Is there anything else you guys just want to add on the card as a whole? And then we've kind of been going at it for a while, so we can leave soon.
Yeah, pretty broad. Just agreeing with something Brent said earlier. Yeah, again, Burns' decision was completely off the table. I'm not saying Burns' decision was live. Just I think Masvidal just has more chance of doing something crazy. Also because this isn't really technical analysis, but the fact that Burns and Usman train together so much, I think, kind of takes down the risks of crazy shit happening. Because you just kind of know what guys are trying to do, particularly grappling. But yeah, Masvidal probably just goes for no flying knee and kills him. But well. I think if I was Masvidal, that would be my game plan.
I could see him coming out super aggressive, but that's speculation, But I honestly could see him coming out trying to kill him first round or 2.
Yeah.
And then just being like, fuck it after that. But who knows? That's pure speculation and has nothing to do with actual stats,
I think it's a correct game plan. That if I was in Masvidal's position, that's probably what I would do. And he did the same thing against Askren. You think Askren, obviously 5-second fight, but the fact that he saw a dominating control wrestler and he just went for it.
Yeah,
you think indicates he's probably going to do the same thing here.
Or he literally had no physical threats coming his way against Askren other than being taken down, though. Or at least Usman is can actually extend his arms and throw a punch. But no, I hear you.
He should steer into volatility. He should really steer into volatility. Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
I hear you.
I was just going to say, you mentioned earlier about how if Paige VanZant goes out there and submits Ribas, you're going to laugh and it's going to be funny, even though you're going to lose money. If Jorge Masvidal goes out there and flying knees Usman in the first 5 seconds, then you know what? I'll lose a bunch of money probably, but that'll be worth it.
Yeah, for sure. I've no action on that fight, but I'm excited for it just as a fan point of view. I think it will be a fun little build up on fight week too. But cool. Thanks, Brett. And is there anything else? Is there anything you want to add from a DraftKings perspective? We probably covered it. We've been talking for 2 hours, but
yeah, we've gone on fairly long. I know we were going to originally post this podcast on Monday, but unfortunately, we've been recording for the last 48 hours. So this will be out on Wednesday by the time you hear this. Yeah, and if there's I'll have all my usual content out throughout the week, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can get more of it. But I think we covered quite a bit today, and it was fun chatting with y'all.
Cool. Thank you. We'll have you on again. And Gugabe, have a good one. Go back to work, do your job, and I'll see you. We have a couple cards coming up, so we'll have some podcasts coming up next week too.
Yeah, I'll probably have to shorten my lunch break a bit, but yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, you're literally on your lunch break. But all right, I'll see you guys.
All right, catch you.
Bye.